Back in November of 2000, the eyes of the world focused on this room as the nation waited for Palm Beach County to manually recount hundreds of thousands of ballots. How those ballots were counted would determine who the next president of the United States would be. An anonymous board appointed to oversee the election process and certify its results came under intense pressure and scrutiny. Judge Charles Burton, Carol Roberts, and Teresa Lepore became household names. Their every move, word, and action was analyzed, inspected, and put under a microscope for the whole world to judge. The event changed their lives forever.
I really don't know who I voted for.
19,000 ballots were thrown away. We don't know who they voted for.
The ballot is very simple.
I hope it wasn't y'all's parents that voted wrong.
Can you follow directions?
It was actually seniors.
We are here because the United States Constitution says we can be here. This ballot is fuzzy. It is deceptive. While there is over and over again a call for a recount, in West Palm there must be a first count.
And that's the first time I had heard anything about, the ballot, and people were upset and the confusing ballot and so forth. And so even when we left early that morning, it was probably about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, where I was on my way home, I was kind of like everybody else, Bush won, no Gore won, no Bush won, no Gore won. And even then, I really felt that we weren't going to be involved in anything.
Look at the ballot! Look at it closely!
Vote for Al Gore. Because of an illegal ballot, their votes were not counted for Al Gore. There is a remedy under Florida law which needs to be followed, which is in fact a statistical adjustment so we get to the standard, and the standard is what do the people want to vote for. Once that standard is done, it is absolutely 100% certain that Al Gore will gain a large enough number of votes that would be clearly far in excess of the difference between Gore and Bush statewide, and he should get Florida's elected votes and he should be elected President of the United States.
Friday, November 3rd, 2000, for the purpose of testing and the tabulating equipment and a review of the absentee ballots. And the results of the testing revealed no errors in the tabulating equipment. Prior to and immediately after the counting of the votes for the election held on November 7th, 2000, the tabulating equipment was again tested and revealed no errors. Pursuant to Florida Statute 102.1414 and at the direction of the Secretary of State, a recount was conducted on November 8th, 2000. Prior to and immediately after, the board conducted a test on the tabulating equipment and once again found no errors. We have received a request from the State Executive Committee of the Florida Florida Democratic Party, who, the long and short of it, is requesting, I believe, a manual recount. One of the things that always struck me about these recounts, it's either a vote or it isn't a vote. And when you start putting discretion in a canvassing board to say, well, if we use this standard, it's a vote. If we use this standard, it isn't a vote. Then you're really putting too much discretion in a canvassing board because it's too subjective.
What people have missed in this, in the recount, was we were not there to cast votes. We were there to count votes. And I have no idea how votes were cast.
The reality is both parties were playing politics, and the Republicans were doing what they had to do to win. The Democrats were doing what they thought they had to do to win. And it's very frustrating because, as I say, there's a lot of good people giving up their time to try and do their job, and to them it isn't politics. It's not a game, and that was probably the most frustrating part. The lawyers involved and the observers involved, I think we kind of found tended to obstruct the process more than anything else. So that's probably one of the most frustrating things.
Judge, I would just ask you to take a look at that dimple compared to the other dimples. These are pronounced and hanging and swinging.
No, they're not all pronounced and hanging. They're just
We don't
swinging.
have time to argue.
All right, your objection's noted. I see that as...
It's markedly different than the other ones.
Whatever. But I can't tell you how many ballots we looked at where number 12 is clearly punched and the rest of that row is clean. And for whatever reason, I guess the party that vote goes against calls that a questionable ballot. We had one precinct with about 800-odd votes and 400 questionables. That's ridiculous, I can tell you. We haven't looked at them yet, but I'm going to tell you that's ridiculous before we even do.
Prior to the vote, though, I do have to make a comment just for the record to tell the board that you have an order from an advisory opinion from the board, the Division of Elections, saying that you cannot do the recounts, and I just want to let you all know and tell you that that is what's there.
And what is the
effect?
penalty?
And that it would be my recommendation that you wait till the judicial...
What is the effect, though, between, we've got an opinion from the Division of Elections that says you can't do it.
Right.
We've got an opinion from the Attorney General that says you can do it.
The
So how
difference
is the board supposed to determine whose opinion we are to follow?
That's exactly why we filed the declaration, the declaratory action in the Florida Supreme Court to have that judicially resolved, so it would be clear which we are supposed to follow. But in the meantime, you have a binding opinion from the Division of Elections.
What happens? Do we go to jail? Because I'm willing to go to jail.
No, I just felt that it...
Madam Attorney, what happens if we don't follow that?
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to repeat, we are going to take this meeting indoors, and you can all watch on Channel 20. We are trying to conducting ourselves professionally. We would appreciate it if all of you would do the same. Problems in this election, these undervotes, is really the problem, and those were, the votes that weren't counted by the machine. People have known about those for years. I go out and talk to groups, and I'll ask how many people have heard of an undervote prior to this election. Maybe one or two raise their hand. Because nobody knew that for years people were voting and all of these votes were not getting counted. Some of the people in politics and so forth, they all knew about it. They never cared because we never had an election this close. And I think what people realize is now that we need to take care of it so that it doesn't happen again. And how do you do that? You get rid of punch cards. You do what the county commission has done here in Palm Beach, and that's devoted an awful lot of money to touchscreen voting so that when people do go to the polls and they do cast their vote, they know their vote's being counted.